It will be hard work, and I definitely hope that the team is able to put together the necessary skills, capabilities, and funding to pull that thing through.
I mean, if you look back over the past, I don't know, 100 years or so and analyze breakthrough technologies coming out from startup companies, it's always, there is always skepticism every single time.
Welcome to Invested, where we optimize for insights, not impressions. I'm Colin Brown, and I am delighted to be joined by my co-hosts Martti and Chris. Each week, we unpack the three most important stories for those of you who are invested in Europe, as citizens and fund managers. Now, just be clear, this podcast is not investment advice, but we do want to provide real value to those of you who are security curious investors. So today we're going to unpack three stories. Donut Labs and their battery breakthrough. Defense Harmattans from France and they received their 200 million investment. And then Sovereign Intelligence Fractile from the UK. So Chris, Martti, you guys ready?
Yes,
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. I'm so pumped to be doing this with you guys. So I'm going to set the scene on the non-controversial story of Donut Lab. Okay, so give me a little bit of headroom to make a case. So I think Donut Labs, and particularly their first instance, which is Verge Motorcycles, developed a groundbreaking piece of hardware. The Donut motor has very much taken the industry by storm and become a market-leading, technically complicated piece of hardware. So they've done that. That's number one. When I look at Verge, I'm really thinking about this as like a Tesla Roadster of its time, right? Verge, the motorcycle, the business that's been spun out of Donut Lab last year, provides them with the opportunity to put rubber on the road in a kind of, high premium sense. So that's their kind of roadster play. That's number two. Now, also last year in November at the Slush conference here in Helsinki, they launched an operating system, which allowed them to simulate, test, and build electric vehicles. And they got some really strong customer traction with British company Longbow and their Speedster. And I think, when I chatted to the Longbow founder, they went from design to putting a automobile, a kind of, fast automobile on the road in 6 months using the Donut platform, right? And then here's the non-controversial bit for LPs. At CES show in January, so early 2026, they announced this solid-state battery kind of revolution. And their announcement was revolutionary in terms of the amount of things that they were saying it was going to do. And then since then, they've been very much in the eye of a media storm. Like thousands of pieces have been written on them. YouTube has become flooded with kind of, everybody is a critic. Yes, they are. No, they can't, etc. The secret of Donut Lab. So that's kind of the scene. I think everybody's familiar with that pathway. So if I step back from that and I put my LP or investor hat firmly on, this is kind of where I am with Donut Labs, and I'd love your input on when I've kind of made the case. So, number one, this company has made amazing claims previously, Donut Motor, and delivered, right? So they've already done a world-class act. Okay. Now, number two, they are definitely messy and chaotic, right? I looked at their data room in November and December when they were raising, and I had 10 different people approach me about the deal, and it was a degree of creative chaos going on. But for me, that doesn't signal fraud behavior, right? In fact, it actually was a stronger signal that they're more likely to have created something interesting because they're messy and chaotic, right? Didn't make me feel comfortable, but it definitely gave me a strong investor signal that in that creative chaos could be something quite interesting. For me, and I don't have a kind of conspiracy theory bone in my body, the fraud case was easy to kind of dismiss, because really, what could they gain by basically raising some money from VCs on a fraudulent battery? They would just destroy their reputations, legal suits would follow. It's kind of like, this wasn't like inventing users for some magical SaaS product. This is chemistry. It's either working or it isn't. So I kind of think the fraud case doesn't have much traction, certainly in my kind of head. And like timing wise, CES was going to be difficult for them. I'm sure if the show had been 3 months later, that would have helped. But I do admire their ambition. And then I'm kind of not surprised that they didn't reveal patents, but I will be shocked if they haven't already filed, 40 or 50 or 60 patents around this technology. And then I think the saddest thing for me, and I'm going to speak very directly to this, I think the reaction in Finland, particularly the Finnish press, was super negative. And that surprised me because this is a high trust country, right? Your word is your bond. You can leave your phone on the bus and basically it gets handed in. And yet the accusations from their fellow Finns really kind of felt below the belt. So that's kind of where I am with Donut. I always think as an investor, you've got to be paid for the risk that you take. So if you're coming into Donut now as an investor, there's a risk. But then if they produce all the evidence and they produce effectively battery with verified tests, then the price goes up, right? Because you're taking less risk. And I do think we should always play offensive with our money. Like we should actually be looking to push the frontier as investors. And sometimes you can't have everything. You can't have the world-beating company that's squeaky clean, that files its taxes perfectly, et cetera, et cetera. So I think where I come out on Donut is investors should look seriously at this company and probably not believe too much hype and too much YouTube gossip. And I want to unpack the trend that I see, but Martti, Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, there's very little data to actually work on, so it doesn't matter who you listen to. Most of the people haven't seen the batteries. Most of the people haven't seen inside the batteries. They know very little about the technology. So it doesn't matter really whether you are an eloquent YouTuber or somebody else. I mean, there's nothing you can work on. And this whole story will not unpack by looking at the vocal performance of the speaker. So there's not a whole lot. My great privilege is that knowing some of the people behind, I've had the opportunity to hold the battery in my hand, and because I trust the gentleman who showed me that, I know that this is not a joke. I can comfortably say that I don't believe that this is a joke. This is not a fraud. There is serious stuff. However, having said that, this is a massive industrial challenge to scale the production, even for the promises of the Verge motorcycles. You need serial production, and not having any understanding of the details of the production process and where are the bottlenecks. I can't really say much. All I know is that scaling up the production to the volumes that this value proposition suggests will not be a casual trip around the park. It will be hard work, and I definitely hope that the team is able to put together the necessary skills, capabilities, and funding to pull that thing through.
Good stuff.
I mean, if you look back over the past, 100 years or so and analyze breakthrough technologies coming out from startup companies, it's always, there is always skepticism every single time. And you need, as a startup company, obviously showcase your technology way before it is ready for the market. Otherwise, no one will know about you. I've had the luxury of analyzing a lot of manufacturing companies over the past 15, 16 years or so. Nordic manufacturing companies, some of them have been within the deep tech realm and specifically additive manufacturing. And it's kind of the same story that you need to showcase your product, your technology way before it's stable. Nothing is ever perfect in the beginning. So I as an investor would probably observe this as a breakthrough technology more than analyzing the specific company. I'm not sure if that's an answer, but I regard this as a super intriguing breakthrough technology. I mean, we've had other companies doing solid state and things like that. I mean, the application areas are endless.
Absolutely. Look, I think, Chris, you make a really good point. And again, this is where I want to talk to the trend, because we're in this podcast, we're going to talk about the event, Donut Lab solid state battery launch, and we're talking about the trend. So for me, the trend here is all about vertical integration, right? And again, if people are not familiar with these terms, generally industries go through this 40 to 50 year cycle where they kind of vertically integrate for product innovation stage, where you need those fast feedback loops. You need to basically see the thing happening in front of you, and you have to know your customer. And then over time, there are certain forces that pull on you to kind of horizontally stack because it's more cost efficient, right? And that's where the product is really stable, right? We know how to make this Hoover. We just, we have parts in different places. It kind of works. We don't need to have it all in one factory. We can specialize. And over a 40 to 50 year cycle, and Chris, you know this better than I do, you see this pendulum swings backward and forward. Now, certainly for the European automotive sector, which would be Donut's major target for this rollout battery, they've been horizontal for decades. And I think one of their biggest challenges is vertically integrated Tesla, vertically integrated BYD has basically kicked in really hard. And again, I would say, the usual challenge is, well, why didn't one of the bigger players do this? Well, again, it's really difficult, even if you're a well-funded horizontal organization, to do this kind of creative, adjacent, disruptive technology plays, right? It's almost not your structural strength. So again, I would say that if you'd asked me the question a couple of years ago, where will a breakthrough in kind of battery technology come from? I would not have said the big automotive sectors. I wouldn't have even said Tesla or BYD because they've also developed their own systems. I would have said it's going to come from a place where there's a degree of creative chaos. They can move a little bit faster, particularly with a lighter weight form like a motorcycle, and where there's an electricity surplus. Right? That's kind of where you would have had the ingredients. Now, you wouldn't have necessarily put the flag on Donut Lab and crown them the winner, but you certainly would have those were my takes on the ingredients you needed to make this shift.
Yeah. And the other thing is that because the value proposition is so outrageously great, Donut Lab is definitely not alone.
It's quite
in
solid.
trying to make this breakthrough. So it's absolutely clear. So to come up with a solid state battery, it needs to be hard, because if it wasn't hard, it would have been there already due to the remarkable value proposition. So it's got to be hard. I just hope that the Finnish team is able to go through the validation and verification of the technology and then really industrialize the production, because I'm sure, in some sources they talk about carbon nanotubes that have been in existence for a long time, but just to produce enough carbon nanotubes in scale is a challenge in itself. So it may be that some components of the production are the ones that will be very, very difficult to produce, and that's where the winners and losers are taking different lanes. But let's see. It'll be very interesting to follow the additional information that will surface during the next few weeks and next few months.
Look, this story's going to run, but I mean in a good way. Donut Lab now needs to hit the market. They have to put out verifiable tests. They have to show that they can manufacture at scale. They've set really ambitious timelines, but Musk is very quotable in lots of ways. But one of my favorite Musk quotes is when he goes, "We specialize in making the impossible merely late." Right now, so for Donut Lab. They've said that they're going to do the impossible. They've said aggressive timelines. Now, actually, if they just deliver this year, they're still better than Elon, because in this particular case, because he's normally 3 or 4 years late on this side. Okay, I want to move on.
Indeed.
So let's move on from electric vehicles to electric vehicles. Martti, what was the story that you wanted to bring today?
Yeah, well, the European company that most of us haven't heard about before is the French Harmattan AI, which is a company that is very young. It's less than 2 years old, established in April of 2020. And what was the piece of news that came recently was that the company received a Series B funding, where the lead investor was Dassault Aviation, which is, of course, one of the primary European makers of fighter aircraft, both manned and unmanned aircraft. And Armattan as such is very much autonomy and software-based company. And They have their own products. I mean, when you go to their webpage, they have training UAS, unmanned aerial systems. They have synthetic aperture radar payloads for UAS, and they have an interceptor drone that is essentially a kamikaze drone that is intercepting other UAVs. Now, when you go beyond that, and when you look at the profile of the founders, and when you think about the collaboration with Dassault, who definitely doesn't need an aircraft manufacturer to partner with, the key deliverable has to be the software related to autonomy. And then, of course, when we talk about manned and unmanned systems, which is the core of Dassault, it's got to be the swarming and manned unmanned teaming software that is in the core. Now, when Armattan was established, then they were clearly challenging the existing status quo, essentially saying that they are the defense technology company that is representing the future air combat, and they were essentially exactly like Anduril, challenging the role of the prime contractors. However, and I think very wisely, rather than trying to simply challenge the prime contractors, you end up working together with them. They have also teamed up with the Ukrainian drone maker Skyaton, which is interesting because, of course, a lot of the hardware that is needed in UAVs is coming from Ukraine today. What is also remarkable that even if we are talking about less than 2-year-old company, even the French President Emmanuel Macron immediately commented and praised that this is great and this is so nice. And yes, it is indeed. I mean, this is the first French defense unicorn having a valuation around 1.44 billion. So it is unique, but clearly the geopolitical environment has probably been one of the aggravating factors that they are commented so well. It's when we think about the credibility of the company, the thing that in a way I find most fascinating is that rather than having serial entrepreneurs here running this company who just recently became interested in defense, the co-founder, CEO has a very strong scientific research background. Even if he's very young, he's 25 years of age.
Okay.
But he has a degree from École and as well as a degree from École Normale Supérieure. And why those matter? They matter because in order to get to those schools, you have to prove your performance in high school. And once you are a graduate from those schools, you have an excellent network toward French government and French companies. So you cannot have a better peer network than going to those specific schools. If we see that training background, all these statements, what we see is that we know that this young company is in the core of the French defense mindset, and that alone, even regardless of what we know about the product, if you have to invest into a founding team, this is the founding team that you should invest into. I rest my case. Any challenge, please.
Now, well, like Martti, I'm really interested in the signal that you think this sends, because obviously, look, we've met 1,000 drone companies in the last couple of years, right? So literally, if I had a euro for every drone company I met, I'd raise a fund just on number of drone companies I've met. But here, what you're thinking is different. So there's a couple of things: is why this company, clearly talented team, etc. But then the question around what's the signal? You know, 200 million investment sounds great, but it's one investor. It's one prime basically putting money into this company. Now, to me, that's a little bit that talks to there's a lot of public funding coming into the primes. They've got to put some of that capital to use and they've got to bring the capability. But it also speaks to the fact that we don't have a venture ecosystem that can back these companies at this stage, at a kind of a growth stage. Does it say that to you, or are you coming from somewhere else?
Well, I may be coming a little bit from a different angle. I mean, the world is still based on real life. In real life, in order to interact with real life, you need hardware. If you want to build hardware that is complex, integrated aerial systems, I mean, building small drones is a different thing. If you are starting to build manned fighter aircraft of the type of like Rafale is, and the unmanned systems that are going together with it. I mean, those are difficult things to build so that you get reliable, sustainable working systems that are maintaining their mission capability over a long period of time. Why should you try to replicate that if there is already somebody in Europe, in France, that is doing that? At the same time, the way how you control those systems, if there is somebody who is able to bring a new angle, a new capability to that part, I think it is the highest wisdom of a company like Dassault, rather than saying not invented here, to embrace when they see that somebody is coming up with a new solution that is better than what they have in-house. If that's the case, I applaud. I mean, I applaud Dassault leadership and Eric Trappier, who is the chairman of the company, for really embracing this young lad and his company. And when they see excellence, they embrace it rather than try to decline it. Any views, Chris? What you think about this?
I just saw the startup, the founder date of April 2024. So it's less than 2 years. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the age, not on the composition and the quality and the backing and the background, but on the age and how, if you have any signals that you feel like are, strengthening your case, or if you haven't seen the operational signals, if there are any.
Well, I haven't seen any operational signals, but I think the thing that I appreciate, even with the danger of repeating myself, the fact that you have a very solid science background, and Muharrem Ghari, who is the CEO, he's a mathematician. He's a long-term mathematician, and you gotta respect that somebody's taking science very seriously, and then only applying this scientific knowledge to the current tasks that we have at hand. Yes, indeed. Of course, I cannot pop the bonnet and look under the hood what is there. I can't do that. But I think that the signs that I see, and especially putting in these tidbits of information to the context of French society, which is a subject for another podcast, I imagine. It's these signs are very positive, and I'm very thrilled, and I'm very, very supportive to having this kind of development in our continent.
Yeah, look, I agree on that one. I think there's a really interesting phrase going around at the moment around the talent distillery, which is where you get a bunch of young spirits, young entrepreneurs, young builders, and you put them in a very limited cask. So think a whiskey barrel of kind of seasoned pros within the sector. So the young spirits kind of don't know what they don't know, and they're ambitious and they really want to drive forward a change. And then you wrap that with people who just make sure they don't blow the doors off every week. Yeah, and that really starts to move. And you can start to see that in companies like Boom Supersonic, and SpaceX did this in the early days, which is a super hot young peer core of very smart engineers and builders, wrapped with a seasoned kind of team that basically supports them, but doesn't steer them, just there acts as a safety mechanism, nothing else. But Chris, let's move on to sovereign intelligence. Third story, what is exciting about this one?
I think we all know the AI theme over the past 5 years, and I think we all know of the company NVIDIA, and I think we all know about what GPUs are, which are much smarter, better than CPUs on AI computation. And I think we know the trillions of dollars that are earmarked national security from the United States, and now more and more. I think I saw some news from Ursula von der Leyen today about AI innovation in Europe, and I think we all know how big this theme has become. But I don't think we all know what inference is, maybe. We know that we train AI models. Maybe we don't, all of us know the inference part, meaning actually executing the computation when you ask an AI. So you have training on the back end, data centers, and you also have the computation inference on the back end as well. But the inference is very cost heavy, it's very compute heavy. Now, in the coming years, I think that we will have novel innovations, breakthroughs that will be, according to a company called Fractile, UK-based, which should make you happy, 100 times faster and leaner and more cost efficient. Not 100x of all of these levers, but some of them. So we have a company called Fractile that announced a funding round last week. NATO Innovation Fund is one of the investors. Kindred, another owner, is another investor. And this company wants to design specialized processors that are much smarter and faster on doing the compute when you want the compute, not the training. And NVIDIA also wants to become much smarter and better at this. So they introduced a supercomputer on CES on this direction. So the inference part, I think, is super interesting. And if you have a reality in a couple of years from now where the inference is much faster, much cheaper, more tokens per second, you can do autonomous vehicles much smarter and faster and more responsive. You can do humanoid robots faster and more responsive. You can do drones more responsive. Harmattan, I think I pronounced it wrongly, could be much better at what they're doing, perhaps. And also Donut Lab. So I think this is a breakthrough from a technology standpoint, but also if you blend in geopolitics, I think Europe needs needs to be a player in building the next big intelligence layer infrastructure for the 21st century. We cannot only rely on the Americans doing compute. I mean, cloud infrastructure equals USA. Also, AI infrastructure currently equals USA for a bit. So Fractile is a very interesting company from technology standpoint, but also geopolitics. And I think to end my case here, on the theme at least, there are lots of geopolitical winds and also even waves, particularly in the Atlantic, in the North Atlantic. So we need a bargaining chip, pun intended. We need leverage toward other countries, and AI is the heart or brain of getting physical applications to life with intelligence in the coming 10 years. And Fractal is a super interesting case, super early, and also based out of the academics from Oxford University or a research institute. The CEO, Walter Goodwin, was also at Amazon for a couple of years. So maybe he got into the American motto. So in combination with that and the European quality research, but United States have quality research as well, I think we have potentially a very interesting company on our hands.
Absolutely. And look, we'll try and avoid geopolitics too much on the show because you can get that everywhere else. But I definitely think we need a capability around chips. Right? We can't rely on America for chips, TSMC for chips, et cetera, et cetera. We already have ASML, Europe's favor on that side. We need to build an ecosystem because semiconductors, chips are at the heart of AI. AI is the transformation wave that is coming through. And if we don't build that capability ourselves, we're always going to be buying it from someone else.
And the question that comes to my mind, of course, is that what you're telling is fascinating and definitely interesting and worth following. But then the question, in order to have a deliverable product for the end user customers, be them the companies that we already spoke about or any other customer, what is needed? I mean, is there going to be a vertical integration, a horizontal integration, probably horizontal? And if there's horizontal integration, how much of those building blocks do we actually have so that we avoid the pitfall of developing great capability that turns out to be isolated due to the fact that the adjacent infrastructure doesn't exist?
I think the good thing is that the demand of compute on demand is much bigger than the supply currently. So we will have, I don't think there is a problem on finding the right vertical or anything like that for this particular company. I mean, people are probably knocking on the door. When are you ready? And Walter Gubin is sitting on his desk and saying, let me work 400 nights in a row first. I'll get back to you. And I'm reading here, it's 25 times faster performance at 1/10 the cost of existing solutions. And it's 100 times faster. And you could reduce energy use by up to 20 times per watt. So what I'm saying is, this is a massive breakthrough. I don't have a perfect answer to your remark or question, Marty. There will be much more capital needed. I think this founding round by the VCR arm of NATO Innovation is quite telling because it's sovereignty. We're not going to talk too much about politics, I promise, Colin, but it's a statement that this is important for Europe.
Mm.
And at least on the paper, at least what they're saying is it is a massive breakthrough. And by the way, what enables this is that you do the compute in memory. So you combine the compute and the memory. So the data doesn't have to travel. And you do that in the same place. And that's kind of what they're trying to do. It's a massively difficult problem.
Yeah, here. And a huge advantage when you get to the edge computing, you can just deliver then the final results, and there are applications everywhere for that, starting from cell phone towers to space, everywhere. Having the computing in the source is spreading everywhere, and in order to do that, energy consumption is the key.
Yes. So you could actually argue that if you combine all of our three companies, you have a perfect marriage of edge computing and moving sideways and upwards in perfect tandem.
Absolutely.
I mean, I do Gemini API calls, and I try to get Gemini to do smart analysis for me. It takes a little while. I mean, it's much faster than myself, but I think in a couple of years, it will be probably 1/10 of the speed, which is the case today. And that will be super useful for edge computing, but everything on the internet. And it will spawn so many more companies out of this, I think. Yeah. That was my addition.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great addition. And I just checked. So Fractile AI, one of their seed round investors, was a UK venture firm called Kindred, which I know, but most probably people don't. Now, the interesting thing with Kindred, and I'll have to check this is still their business model, is when they invest in you at seed stage and their first institutional money in, you get shares in their fund. It's a two-way investment, right? So they invest in you, and you also become an LP directly in their fund. I'll check their returns because my friend's the MD, so I'll WhatsApp her. But effectively, I think that's also because that attracts a particular type of founder, right? Because it's a particular type of builder that's focused on themselves, no surprise, but also wants to be part of a community as well. But not a kind of community in terms of, going on the journey at the same time, but also benefit from the team that's around you and thinks that they can learn from the team around you. Kindred's quite clear on that one. Anyway, look, guys, thanks so much for the showtime. This was amazing. Hopefully this was valuable to LPs and they'll give us a lot of feedback. And we'll see everybody on the next episode.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All the best.